Kano and Jigawa State, of Oyo and Osun State, or Imo and Anambra State, okay, as units of federation. What are those differences and peculiarities that they have, okay, that first and foremost made them to be units of federation separate from one another? You understand what I'm saying? So it is obviously a matter of great proportion. If you restructure Nigeria in a manner that you recognize perhaps probably 2 levels of administration, just like the last national conference under the government of Goodluck Jonathan, agreed. Okay, allow the 36 states of the federation to also have their constitutions. Remove the local government level. Because there are a lot of peculiarities in how each of these 36 states actually is. As it is today, we are running, in my view, a glorified unitary system of government, because what the councillor, for instance, in Gombe State will expect to collect as remuneration is the same thing with the councillor who comes from perhaps Bayelsa State, despite the huge oil resources that accrue to that state. And so where is the basis of the federal structure there? So I am of the view that if any role for that matter, and of course I made it sufficiently clear that we should not try to politicize the traditional institution by inserting any role for them in the constitution, aside from the already pivotal role they are playing in maintaining national unity and tranquility.
Okay. Professor Mato, thank you very much. Earlier, my colleague had indicated that we'll be joined via Zoom by one of revered traditional rulers. We would like to welcome at this time His Royal Majesty, King Godwin Ginika, JPOFR, Benemene of Ogoni Land and President, Supreme Council of Ogoni Traditional Rulers. Is also former chairman of the River State Traditional Rulers Council. Your Majesty, a pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria, and we do hope that you've had the benefit of listening in on the comments by our 3 guests. Professor Joy Zilo, who is a professor of public law at the University of Nigeria and Nsukka, is with us at the Enugu Network Center. Professor of political science, Kadburi Mato, who just finished speaking here in the Abuja studios, and Dr. Afaha, who is an associate professor and head of history at the University of Abuja. Your Royal Majesty, they've raised a number of very pertinent issues, but tell us from the position of the traditional stool, why should there be any constitutional role for our royal fathers against the background of what we have experienced? All right, it looks like there's still the audio challenge to the Zoom connection to His Royal Majesty. Royal Majesty, presumably you heard my question, but assuming you didn't, let me just recast it succinctly. Why should there be a role assigned to traditional rulers, specifically in our Constitution? It looks like still the audio has been sorted out. Once our engineers are able to get that, then we'll get back. Dr. Philip Afaha, let's also take a look at this. I know that Professor Joy Zulu will also come in terms of situating the constitutional provisions. We saw a major departure in our 1999 Constitution, where in terms of the legislative chambers, you no longer had a House of Chiefs. And the 1999 Constitution borrows heavily from that. But there were unsavory experiences in the First Republic between political gladiators, these were called politicians, and traditional rulers who were also playing a political role that Kadburi Mato says, look, insulate them from this. And some persons believe that it was those unsavory experiences that then informed the absence of any constitutional role assigned to traditional rulers effective 1999 constitution. Were traditional rulers, as part of the political structure and constitutional democracy in the First Republic, really helpful, or otherwise, I don't want to use the word unhelpful, but what real value did they offer or present to the First Republic, which of course collapsed after 5 years and some months?
Yes, we must understand and really give credence to the traditional institution in the First Republic. Remember, throughout the colonial rule, it was the traditional institution that participated in governance. They were the ones that were actually running the show and reporting to the colonialists. Now, at First Republic, Nigeria needed the traditional institutions who at that time were coming in with experience that even the political class did not have in managing people and resources, in articulating government policies. It was the traditional institution that knew those things. The political class and later the military had to learn from the wealth of experiences of the traditional institutions. Well, that has been their business from time, even when the white men were here. So they were so important to the system, they were so significant as at the First Republic, because they had to get these politicians that were coming into show newly to learn the ropes in how to run government, how to do the policies, how to execute them, the tax systems. All these things were being done by the traditional institutions before First Republic. So Nigeria needed traditional rulers as at the First Republic to play that role. That is why it is not also good to always dismiss what the military did. The military must have noted one or two frictions. They must have noted one or two issues that made the military, as at 1979, to say, okay, let traditional rulers' rule be limited to conflict resolution, be limited to advisory role, and all those things. They did not do that because they were drunk. They knew what they were doing. As at the time they took that decision, it was necessary that the traditional religion should be divorced from the day-to-day running of government, so as to maybe to retain their dignity. So it was good. So as far as First Republic was concerned, the traditional rulers were so necessary because they were the ones that were to come and birth the system of government, the system of government that Nigeria later enjoyed. You needed them at that point in time.
Dr. Afaha, thanks. Professor Kabiru, I would like you to weigh in on this. Yes, in terms of the administrative structure under the colonial authority, traditional rulers were very prominent. But there was also the parallel role played by political activists who felt that there had to be an end to colonial rule. And once the political activists, who were now politicians, succeeded in installing a constitutional democracy, beginning, of course, with the various constitutional conferences, regional administration, self-rule, and ultimately independence, the tension between the political class and the traditional class was almost inevitable.
Yes, it was, because you see, it's a case of what you call revolution of high-rising expectation. The traditional institution was deeply in place. It was, even at the advent of colonial rule, used as the instrument of administration. Laws are passed from top to bottom, and then the feedback mechanism was also, the same manner. But soon after colonial rule, I think the role that the traditional institution played more was advisory. Yes, you had Council of Chiefs. There you go, Assembly of Chiefs in virtually, all the 3 regions across the country. As it is today, you have Council of Chiefs in virtually all the 36 states of the Federation, including Federal Capital Territory. And they play certain specific advisory roles to the government in power. Okay, so the rivalry, or whatever you may wish to call it, that existed between perhaps the emerging political class and the dominant traditional institutions during colonial rule and First Republic obviously had to exist because a new crop of ruling class was emerging, okay, that eventually subordinated, the traditional institution by, the adoption of this Western liberal method of democracy that we are adopting today. But I want to say again,
Professor Basa, I think we just want to hold you
okay.
because
we understand that the audio connection to His Royal Majesty King Godwin Guinewa, JPOFR, who is the President of Supreme Council of Ogoni Traditional Rulers. The audio connection is okay now. That's what our engineers are telling us. Your Royal Majesty, once again, we apologize for the glitches in our Zoom connection. I just wanted to find out if you've had the benefit of listening to what our three guests have been saying, and therefore what your Majesty's view would be on why there should be constitutional role specifically assigned to traditional rulers, considering the enormous influence and powers that they wield already.
I have started saying that the governance of this country, that the traditional rulers are the foundation of the government in day. But I can assure you that I don't know what happened in the north, but where I come from, the south, and the east, the traditional rulers are not well recognized so much as we are supposed to be. I don't blame them because it's not in any constitution. So it should be enshrined into the constitution so that we can know our limit and our powers. We are the founder of this place. We own this place. We own everything. So we should be taken care of. And we are the people that are making sure that there is peace at the grassroots end. We play the vital role in the governance of the state and the federation.
I was just wondering, Your Royal Majesty, one more time, just to restate very briefly some of the points that have been articulated by our guests, and what is, of course, fairly obvious, that, for instance, every state of the Federation has its respective chieftaincy law, on the basis of which traditional rulers are classified: first class traditional rulers, second class, and so on and so forth. And their duties, rights, privileges, and remuneration are all indicated in those laws. And those laws, of course, also derive from the Constitution. So what exactly would be the necessity of having a constitutional rule specified in any provision in the Constitution, considering also, Your Majesty, as our guests have also mentioned, and as we also know full well, that our traditional systems are not uniform throughout the country. In fact, by the time you cross one boundary to another, you are likely to find a different traditional system. So, are you going to have a unitary system of traditional authority and governance if you were to enshrine it in the Constitution?
Thank you so much. I don't think military would help us. Let us be democratical. But as far as I'm concerned, the law of chieftaincy and traditional leadership should be enshrined into the country's constitution, so that whatever happened in the north happened in the west.
Well, we have lost that connection again. We do hope that we can, we will. Okay, I'm told he's back now. Your Royal Majesty, King Guinewa, thank you. But I would like you to explain to us, you talked about the fact that enshrining or assigning constitutional roles to traditional rulers will give you more recognition. I would like you to tell us in what context, because already traditional rulers play a very vital role, and there is hardly any serious, national deliberation and national issues that the traditional rulers are not consulted, or even your opinions or your thoughts in any matter. So, in what context of recognition are you talking about?
Well, recognition in the different angle. The government of Rivers State, the government of Imo State, the government of the South should be able to recognize traditional rulers. Though we have a council headed by our chairman, I have been there before. But you don't blame the politicians, because they are only doing what they say in the constitution. And they are the people that handled all the bulk of resources. But I want to remind you that that whatever is happening in Nigeria, it is the traditional rulers that are the foundation of whatever we are doing today. Apart from that, we are in the rural villages making sure that there is peace everywhere. That one is a big role that we are playing. Without peace, there will be no development. And then somebody outside there cannot go and know what is happening in your domain. You know their tradition, you know their behavior, you know each and every one of them. And we have sleepless nights making sure that we succeed. We should be properly taken care of. I'm not talking in terms of money anyway. Money is on its own side. But what of high recognition and respect, which we are losing here? I want to tell the federal government, because they are the fathers of the country, that if it is constitutional right, they should be able to enshrine the traditional leadership in, so that what happened in the north happened in the west, and happened to us here at the grassroots. We deserve some respect. We deserve some very good treatment. All the people from the president to the councillors, they are our subjects. And we owe them to make sure that
Your Royal Majesty, Your Royal Majesty, please pardon my interjection at this point. I would like you to clarify some of the issues you have raised about more respect and more attention. I was just wondering, there is no human being without a cultural background, and especially for us in Africa, and more so in Nigeria, we pride ourselves with our culture. And our traditional institutions are revered. And so it would be unthinkable for any one of us, I mean, depending on where you come from, to be disrespectful of the traditional institutions. I'm sure Your Majesty would have witnessed this. Even politicians, when they are on the political campaigns, they make it a duty to stop by at the palaces and to get the blessings of the traditional authority. So there is that respect already accorded. But I was just wondering also, Your Majesty, are traditional rulers without a constitutional rule ineffective?
Well, I think that the fault is not from the politicians. Though I don't know whether we have any place in the Constitution. We have any way in the Constitution of this country. If we have a national constitutional right, we can fight our battle. That is if our governors did not respect us, or if the president does not respect us. But in the absence of any constitution right we have, from father to beggars, yes, because there is nothing you can do. And the worst part of it is that when they drag us into politics, sometimes you go out of your way. You love them with your son and support them. At the end of the day, no return. We deserve so much honor and respect and good services to ourselves and our people. This thing is lacking in Nigeria, particularly in the South. So the question now is that what do we do?
Let me just ask you this last question. One of our guests, that's Professor Joy Ezilo, mentioned some, issues or challenges, if you may. While it will be difficult to assign constitutional roles to traditional rulers, and one of them she mentioned is tenure and lack of uniformity in how traditional rulers ascend the throne. And of course, there are other issues, that she has also mentioned. Now, if assigning a constitutional role to traditional rulers would also mean having to deal with these issues, and of course denying you, some of you don't have, your tenure is forever. It's hereditary. You were not elected. Some of you are selected. It will mean having to deal with these issues. Will traditional rulers be willing, to also give in to some of these, amendments that may come in?
The trouble is that the tradition of this country varies from one place to another. Let me take an example of the enthronement of a king. It cannot be unified because we have different traditions of getting to the throne. So that one, the government cannot handle it. It is only handled by us. But when you have finally succeeded and you are on the throne, it is the duty of the government to take care of you. It is the duty of the traditional rulers to make sure, first of all, you have to respect government, and then cooperate with us to make sure there is peace and development in the area.
Your Royal Majesty, thank you very much. I would just would like you to listen to the closing thoughts of our other guest, Professor Joy Ezilo. I'd like to raise this question again. I mean, we've listened to His Royal Majesty. We've not had a tremendous amount of time with him. But clearly, what we are dealing with here is, if we were to pursue the argument further, it would be the tension between a monarchical system of government and constitutional democracy. I mean, the imperatives of constitutional democracy would sometimes appear to be antithetical to that of a monarchy. Do we have this clear recognition? And therefore, to avoid challenges going forward, assuming there's a brainwave of enshrining provisions in the Constitution for a role for traditional rulers in the instant republic.
I think that's precisely what we have to run away from. And because remember in colonial time, they had a monarchy. It was a monarchical. They have the queen or the king is their system, and that was very convenient for them. In any case, the culture, religion, everything was diverse. But now we are clearly in constitutional democracy, and like I said, there are basic principles that are so fundamental for the success of those for constitutional democracy, which include periodic election. And you don't have a mix of this and that, and it becomes we have a constitutional crisis in our hands. And apart from that, we cannot, I can foresee a situation where if they push and advocate and they have all the connections, there could be a smuggled in the Constitution. And that will become a legal subterfuge because they may not give them any major role, and it becomes like some of the constitutional issues we are still dealing with local government, whether it's a third tier or fourth tier. And with what His Royal Majesty said, I don't think Constitution can confer legitimacy with regard to traditional institutions and traditional leaders. And we have to get it clear, legality versus legitimacy. Because there is a lot of, he emphasized the fact of respect, recognition, and I could see from the demand of National Council of Traditional Rulers that they want a national role and they want it enshrined in the Constitution. And we are running a federal system of government, and we've been still battling for restructuring, for having a physical federalism, and then you have a traditional rulers recognized in a constitution, and then they have a role and then they are called more to Abuja than serving their people at home. And we are talking about devolution of power as the way to go, and the way that they can have more relevance to their people. And everybody wants to still continue to head to Abuja, so then we're having one big government and we never achieve it right. It's really, I don't think elevating them or giving them constitutional role will even solve their legitimacy problem. Because what happened in southern part of Nigeria, especially southeast and south, is that these people are, some of them are imposed. The certification processes is questionable, and some are imposed, and there is a mixed match of everything. Where you have traditional stools that are hereditary, like the Oba of Bini commands a lot of respect, but even in some parts of Igbo land especially, they resist now any traditional institution that you talk about being hereditary. And just because people are becoming Republican, the people are resisting, and we don't have a monarchical system of governance. And so
go on and on. I know you have a lot to share with us. Unfortunately, we earlier indicated we have a second topic, and we must round off our discussion on this topic. Quite interesting, I must say. And of course, there are so many issues that we, of course, would need to address. Professor Joy Ngozi Zilo is Professor of Public Law, University of Nigeria in Nsukka. She's also former United Nations Special Rapporteur, human rights lawyer, and an activist specifically with gender inclusion bias. Professor Joy Zilo, thank you. Let me also acknowledge His Royal Majesty King Godwin Giniwa, Benemene Tai Kingdom. He's also the President, Supreme Council of Ogoni Traditional Rulers, and former Chairman, River State Council of Traditional Rulers. Your Majesty, thank you for joining us all the way from Tai Kingdom. Let us also appreciate right here in the studio Dr. Philip Afaha. He is the Associate Professor of History and Head of the History Department, University of Abuja. Associate Professor, thank you very much for joining us. Professor Kabiru Mato, a political scientist, and as Kingsley said, you were on our wall. Thank you for coming back. Let's appreciate you. Thank you, as always. Once again, let's also appreciate and do apologize sincerely of course, inability to connect with His Royal Majesty King Alfred Papa Priye Jetispef, who is the Amayanabo of Tumbra and Chairman Bayelsa State Traditional Rulers Council, and also former pioneer military governor of Old River State. We couldn't, of course, connect with you all the way in Yanogwa. We promise we'll do better next time. So that's it for this discussion. Coming up next is our second topic, which, of course, will have to do with the UNICEF's report, which indicates that Nigeria has overtaken India as the highest contributor, of course, to primary health care indices in the world. So we'll take a short break now. When we come back, we'll get on with that conversation.
The Council of Our Fathers.
I believe we have fought one civil war too many in this country. So those who experience it will run away from it.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together. together.
My name is Nando Jamda
Muhammad.
Stevita
Hussein Musa. Roduna Joel Tinji. Said Musa. John.
I'm a carpenter. I've been doing this for more than 8 years now.
Ina sai da plantain na kai kimamin shekara 3.
I've been selling my tomatoes for about 10 years now, and I do it for a better Nigeria.
And I do it for a better Nigeria.
Ina wannan sana'ar lemu ne domin Najeriya ta ci gaba. Ina sa domin Najeriya ta kyau. And you can see how we are doing our small little work to make Nigeria great.
As you can see, I'm a technician and I'm doing it to help myself and to help my generation.
Ina zaune ne a Plateau na business. Kuma ina yin wannan domin ci gaban ƙasar Najeriya.
For a better Nigeria. This message is from the National Orientation Agency.
Guess what?
What?
I scored a hat trick today.
Cool.
Wow.
And how did you celebrate?
Just do your hands like this.
And hold your nose like this.
Body odor is caused by germs. That's why you need the new improved Dettol Cool Soap, which protects against 99.9% odor-causing germs with an extra burst of menthol freshness. Dettol, be 100% sure.
Dialogue, empathy, love, and unity. These are vital components of nation building.
For all to be well, we appeal that we should refrain from volatile, provocative, inciting messages and language.
Let's build and not destroy.
Welcome back. If you've just joined in, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. And time now for us to talk on primary health care. And we want to look at, of course, the state of those centers. Now, UNICEF reports indicates that Nigeria has overtaken India as the highest contributor to the death of children under 5 years in the world, unfortunately.
And apart from that gloomy infant mortality picture, Nigeria is equally said to have the highest maternal mortality rate globally. And the ugly trend has been attributed by experts to the poor state of our primary health care centers, which really, as they say, is now at a critical stage.
And experts have also indicated that some whooping 2.5 trillion naira is required to fix about 10,000 primary healthcare centers, spread across the country, and that's within the next 10 years. Now, that's quite a tall order and requiring some very serious political will, Kingsley.
No question about that, Claire. We have seated with us in the studios to discuss the state of primary healthcare centers in Nigeria. Let's welcome Senator Chukwuka Utazi. He is chairman of Senate Committee on Primary Healthcare and Communicable Diseases. Senator Utazi, pleasure to have you with us this morning.
It's my pleasure to be here once more.
Okay. Also here with us in the studios, we would like to welcome Dr. Yusuf Tanko Sununu. He is chairman of the House of Representatives Committee on Healthcare Services. Honorable, pleasure to have you with us this morning.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
And last but not the least, of course, is a familiar face, Dr. Faisal Shuaib, Executive Director and CEO, National Primary Healthcare Development Agency. Dr. Shuaib, delighted to have you with us this morning.
Yeah, good morning, viewers. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so I would like to start this conversation with the legislators who, of course, have a responsibility to oversight, some of these facilities and institutions. And we have two of them here, fortunately, Distinguished Senator Utazi and, of course, Honorable Dr. Tanko Sununu. Distinguished Senator, what can you tell us about the state of our primary healthcare centers? What have you found out?
Well, you see, the state of our primary healthcare centers in the country is not I won't want to say it's not deplorable, but I want to say that things are not working the way we want it to be, because majority of Nigerians reside in the rural areas, and the nearest point of call, as far as their health is concerned, is the primary health care centers. And in these primary health care centers, we don't have the requisite, qualified personnel to be there for obvious reasons. Most of the doctors and qualified nurses will not want to be in the rural areas because you don't have electricity, you don't have good roads, you don't have good accommodation, you don't have schools for their children to attend. All these things bedevil the quality of primary health care in the places. Added to that is that the buildings, the infrastructure there, you have deficit infrastructure-wise. And then you don't have the materials, with which to work, in those places. So with the result that you cannot expect Nigerians to access healthcare in those areas and they remain healthy. So the problems are there. Because if you have the problems from the rural areas, because the primary healthcare center is the first point of call. From there, if you have complications, you go to secondary healthcare and then tertiary. But this place, you don't have anything to work with. And that is why we are now canvassing this issue, that the government of the Federation, following the budget speech of Mr. President, the 2021 budget speech, he made, the policy direction has been laid. And that's what we are working on. This policy direction he's given in the 2021 budget speech is what all of us involved in the primary health care issue in the country are pursuing.
Okay, let's hold it and bring in the honourable member. Dr. Sudono, infant and maternal mortality deaths, going higher than even in India. That is very sad. And that's irrespective of the gains we made during the MDGs and even the SDGs. We have the SDGs now, which of course has specific goals to cut back on infant and maternal deaths, by 2030. But we'll seem to have, lost, not made much progress in that. Is it a matter of policy somersault? Is it a matter of policy gap? Or, basically that of poor infrastructure?
Well, thank you very much. Let me just say the issue of rising maternal mortality and infant mortality that today we are counted above India is multifactorial. It could be infrastructural policy and a lot of issues. If you look at the infrastructure determines accessibility. Most of when there is, let's take for example, maternal mortality. The leading cause of maternal mortality is obstetric hemorrhage. And you have only 4 hours within which to act before you can save a life of a woman bleeding. If you look at it now, you realize that most of the villages have no access to such infrastructure that they can go and get treated within 4 hours. And that made it distinct. Apart from that, there is also a policy somersault. We move from one policy to another without really putting much effort to this thing. If you look at the concept of primary health care that came even from 1978, what is the concept? It's to make health care through a scientific and socially acceptable method and practical to the people so that they can do it at minimal cost that they can be able to maintain at any level of time. But if you look at where we are now, the access is not universal. The National Health Insurance Scheme is also not in any way providing a better opportunity for services to be accessible to this thing. And that brought us here that there is need for us to change our policy framework. We are reviewing the National Health Insurance Scheme so that it can cover a wider period that will help in covering the gap. We are also looking at revamping and revitalizing the primary health centers so that they can be effective to render services as closer to the people as possible. And this is the issue. Here we must look at, as said by Senator Otazi, we must look at infrastructure, resources for health, also the budget funding in terms of this. And when you look at the funding, let's assume, at least if you want to have an effective primary health center that can provide those services, you need to put infrastructure-wise, you need to please at least put 82 to 100 million to have a system that can function effectively. And not only that, you must give it a very strong backing in terms of personnel resources for health. You need a doctor there that can work on it. You need midwife. You need a lot of services that can do. And that's another huge sum of money. So we now thought that, look, this concept of making healthcare available, affordable, and qualitative to the generality of society cannot easily be achieved by government alone. So we have, as a matter of fact, the legislature and the executive, we came up to conclusion the only way we can is to come and advocate further so that we can also look at both international, national, sources of funding so that we can come together, merge resources, move forward, and that concept has also been proceeded before now with the primary health care under one roof. That tried to bring, it's another policy, that tried to bring both the federal government and the state primary health centers and the local government so that we can come together under one roof. We have the same policy, we have the same guidance, and also we must commend the National Assembly for insisting that the National Health Act must also come into operation, so that this has now brought additional resources to the primary health centers through Basic Health Care Provision Fund that will provide both for upgrading of facility and also services, so that each and every center must be able to produce at least a basic package that is satisfactory.
Yeah, Honorable Dr. Sonono, thank you very much. Let's bring in Dr. Faisal Shuaib. Dr. Faisal Shuaib, I mean, we've had you on Good Morning Nigeria on a number of occasions. And under the Buhari administration, the immediate past Minister of Health was our guest on Good Morning Nigeria, and he rolled out the federal government's plan for the revitalization of primary health care centers across the country. Where are we on that program before we start saying, all right, this is what we want to do this time?
Right. So since 2015, when President Buhari came into power, it was very clear that his vision was around strengthening the health sector by making sure that we have a solid foundation. That foundation of the health sector is primary health care. And this is why the revitalization of primary health care centers was enunciated as a policy. What we have seen, though, is that there has been some progress in terms of revitalizing some primary health care centers. But in a lot of places, what has happened is not necessarily revitalization in the true sense of the vision and the aspirations of the federal government. What we've seen is that in some states, for example, people will renovate health facilities, and they call that revitalization. So what we're doing as a government, in collaboration with the legislature, is to say we have to go back to the drawing board and make sure that when we talk about revitalization, we're talking about the infrastructure being okay. So yes, you have to renovate, but at the same time, there has to be critical elements, such as the utilities, right? You have water, you have electricity, but most importantly, that you have the human resources, the workforce that will deliver the service. Now, in a number of states, you'll go to primary healthcare centers that may have the right infrastructure, but the human resources are not there. What we've now sat together as a Federal Ministry of Health, MPHCDA, and the legislature, what we've also now done is say, what exactly will it take for us to deliver basic health services for all Nigerians between now and 2010, so that we can actually achieve universal health coverage and make sure that, unlike the past when we did not achieve the Millennium Development Goals, that this time around we actually achieve the Sustainable Development Goals that are specific.
We made
specific to the health sector.
Significant progress under the MDGs.
Yes, we did make significant progress, but a lot of other smaller countries actually achieved. We cannot, as a great country with such blessed human resources, continue patting ourselves on the back with just progress. We need to hit the mark. What Mr. President has said, even in his speech, is that we have to strengthen primary health care. So in strengthening primary health care, we're trying to galvanize all critical stakeholders to say, what is it going to take for us to strengthen primary health care, so that by 2030, we're not again having another Good Morning Nigeria session talking about how we're going to strengthen primary health care. We want to deliver, we want to meet the aspirations of all Nigerians, and that is why we're talking about how much will it take. We've done an assessment and say, yes, while it is very critical for us to manage the resources efficiently, transparently, and in an accountable manner, what is the gap that is required, and how do we bring in the private sector, like we've seen with Ebola, with COVID-19 outbreak response? How do we bring in our donors, with government leading in front, and they say, yes, if this is what government wants to do, then we will follow government. So all of these conversations are around how we're going to make sure that in the next few years, at least in every ward, you have one functional primary healthcare center that has all the resources to manage basic health services.
How much institutional memory is being sourced for this new push for a revitalized primary healthcare system? I'm asking this question because it is generally acknowledged that when Professor Olukoya Ransom Kuti was Minister of Health, even though under a military regime, he made primary healthcare the focal point of the regime's healthcare drive. And it was to a large extent successful. So what worked at that time that is failing now, or that needs to be further ramped up, if you like, so that we can achieve the critical mass needed for primary health care? Any of the guests can take the question.
Kingsley, you are absolutely spot on. What we have done as a Federal Minister of Health is look back to when we were successful, right? In terms of programming, right, we've eradicated the white polio viruses. Great. We've eradicated Ebola very well. We're at the point where we've improved routine immunization to levels that are comparable only to when Professor Olukoya Ransom Kuti was a minister. We've looked at what it took, what were the building blocks. Those building blocks are what we're all putting together now. Very, very critical to this is finance. The finance requires that we actually make provision for the funding that will actually not only be for maintenance. So we want to congratulate President Muhammadu Buhari and the National Assembly for making sure that we have the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund. But the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund is largely to maintain, right? It's going to be good for us to maintain our primary healthcare centers. But at this point, we need much more than maintenance, right? Even working with the National Health Insurance Scheme, right? We need to bring our primary healthcare centers to a level where they at least will be at ground zero.
Okay, because sometimes we talk only in monetary terms, what is needed. You have told us we need about 2.5 trillion naira to fix 10,000 primary healthcare centers. Now, for the purposes of M&E, and to also hold you accountable, so that Nigerians will hold you accountable, do you have a data of the needs, to be done over this period of time?
Absolutely. So I'll tell you. So we did the assessment, and what is required is about 2.5 trillion. But by the time you put in all the resources, including the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund, what the states are contributing, what our donors and our development partners are contributing, that gap is now just about 1 trillion, right? With 1 trillion naira over the course of 10 years, right, we'll not only be able to fix the supply issues, right, in terms of the health facilities, right, but also the demand issues. You may recall that in 2018, President Muhammadu Buhari launched the CHIPS program, the Community Health Influencers Promoters Services, right? That is supposed to link up the communities with the health centers. It's not just a question of building a fine health center. It's also where people go to those health centers. So we're marrying all of that, absolutely. We're marrying all of that to have now a robust and comprehensive primary healthcare system.
One question we've always asked, and that's Dr. Faisal, I'm going to put a question to this distinguished senator and honorable. Senator, you ticked off some of the critical issues that we have with our primary healthcare center: infrastructure, utilities, and personnel. Look, is the federal government going to have to construct roads in the rural areas? Even though you have Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, what role do you expect of the subnational entities? Because primary health care centers are also in urban areas. Are they on the same page with you on this? So that Dr. Faisal can make all his arrangements, make all his plans, you can provide all the funding and oversight, and then going forward, you will find that after a while, the thing, as one honorable member said, the thing will just be doing like this, like this, like this.
Well, you see, at the heart of all these issues is a synergy, amongst the different levels of government, and it is our expectation, each time the federal government gives its budget, all the state governments also tailor their budgets towards after what the federal government has done in terms of rural development. If you look at the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, you see what they're doing. You see what RAMP is doing in states. Federal government working with the World Bank, to get things done for our people. If the state governments key into what the federal government are already doing, I think there will be meaningful development in that area in terms of putting the infrastructure. You see, we also expect, the federal government will not do everything. They come in to bring in the critical influence in whatever thing is being done at the local government area in the states. So it's the duty of the states to, to key in, provide electricity. The federal government is also involved in electricity. To put the roads, the rural development agency in the Federal Ministry of Agriculture is also involved in that through RAMP. To bring to make sure that there is infrastructure. That's what we are looking for here now. Okay. That the federal government will want to bring money. So this money we are looking for, which we want in this federal budget, is going to complement whatever thing the state government is doing. So that at least in at least 10,000 health centers in the country, you will have one functional in every ward.
Fine.
That can work, that have everything that you need to get things done.
An honorable member, fine, you set up all these healthcare centers, they are all primary healthcare centers, they are working. Maintenance.
Yes, I think I will agree with you. That's why we got it wrong in Nigeria. We have a poor maintenance culture. But the plan and design is to be in such a way that there is continuity in services and maintenance. How do I say that? If you look at what we had before was a lot of policy somersault. You've said that we got it wrong because if we look at even our budgetary allocation to healthcare, which even here in Abuja, it was signed that at least it should be 15% of the total budget of the country
Dr.
allocated to health.
I'm afraid I have to stop you.
Okay.
Yes, we are almost eating into 9 o'clock, but we do appreciate you, Dr. Yusuf Tanku Sonono, member representing Ngaski Shanga Yauri, Federal Constituency of Kebbi State, and Chairman House Committee on Healthcare Services. Thank you very much for joining us. And distinguished Senator Chukwuka Otazi, Chairman Senate Committee on Primary Healthcare and Communicable Diseases. Always a pleasure to have you here with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Feza Shuaibu, Executive Director, CEO, National Primary Healthcare Development Agency, NPHCDA. Of course, with the two both representatives here, I have no doubt that you have a robust legislative backing. Right. So,
all right, so that does it for us today. It's been a crowded day, as it were, in terms of conversation, but we hope you enjoyed it. We're back tomorrow, same time, 7 in the morning. Until then, have a nice day. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
I am Claire Dilabo Abdurazu. Don't forget to wear a mask, observe physical distancing, and stay safe. Also, stand against rape and rapists.